What is different about your product?
You got a story to tell. Something gonna connect to somebody else.
How to actually run a business versus having a vision for a business.
A lot of people come to me and they say they're scared to take that next leap.
Visual design is always going to be driven by the vision.
And I just was like, how do I do this?
What am I adding that they don't have?
Hey, brand builders, ready to take your brand to the next level? I'm Dana Ammons, and welcome to the Brand Blueprint. Welcome back to the Brand Blueprint podcast. I'm your host, Dana Ammons, and today we have an extraordinary guest who is redefining cultural expression through fashion. Joining us is Mapate Diop, the visionary co-founder of Diop. Mapate has a compelling story that intertwines his West African heritage with contemporary fashion, creating unique and meaningful apparel. Today, he will share his insights on market research, consumer insights, product development, sales, and marketing, but more importantly, his journey bringing Diop to the market. Mapate, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Dana. Excited to be here. Can't wait to chat. We are excited to have you. As we talked about in pre-production, we are really excited about having you as our first fashion brand featured on the Brand Blueprint. We have already talked to a couple of founders in the hair care space. We've talked to a founder in the beverage space, and now you are representing the fashion category, which is a category we actually love on this show. It's near and dear to my heart from a personal standpoint. I'm a big believer in fashion and being fashionable as a guy. So I am very excited to interview you today, but we also are looking forward to having future brands on as well. So thanks again for taking time out of your busy schedule to join the show.
100%. I'm glad to hear it. And yeah, and hopefully we'll be able to get to the good stuff.
Yep. So listen, let's jump into our rapid fire quick question session. And this is where we allow our audience opportunity to get to know you on a personal level and have a little fun with it. So let's get started. All right. So first question I like to ask everybody, what's your favorite routine in the morning in terms of beverage? Are you a coffee person or a tea person or something else?
Definitely a coffee person.
Definitely a coffee person. How do you like your coffee?
Just black with a little bit of whole milk.
Very cool. Very cool.
Mhm.
Now, in terms of your morning routine, are you a early bird or are you a night owl?
Actually, an early bird.
Very cool. And what kind of time do you usually keep in the morning, and what's your morning routine behind it?
I wake up at 7:30 so I can go running. Yeah, ideally before my coffee. That's a great way to center yourself. I find it meditative, and it's a great way to organize my thoughts and think about how I'm going to tackle the day.
Very cool. Very cool. Now, shifting to something more near and dear to your heart, who is your style icon?
My style icon is Miles Davis. I think not just because of the way he looked or what he wore or his longevity, but because of his very intense focus on what the sort of work he was doing and that sort of impact that it had on his perspective and taste. It's something we think about every day when we're developing products, iterating on products, and even just thinking about our customer, how we reach them, how we talk to them, and who they are. I think a lot of what he did is very instructive and sets a really great example from a style perspective.
Yeah, major legend in the music genre and in the style genre, Miles Davis. I love that. What would you, in one word, use to describe your personal style?
I like to think of our own personal style as very bright. We like a lot of colors. I like a lot of colors, even when they're clashing a little bit. I just think it adds a lot of flair and a lot of personality, and is something that is a really great way to start a conversation with people.
Very cool. Very cool. Now, another question, a little bit broader on the spectrum of kind of travel, but what's one of your favorite cities that you've recently visited?
I was very lucky recently to go to Rome for a week, and it was delightful. And the sort of place you only ever hear about, so getting
Yep.
a chance to go is a real treat.
Yeah, no, definitely. I had a chance to actually visit Rome for the first time last November with my significant other. We had an absolutely fantastic time. So I really love that answer. Now, last question in rapid fire, and this one is always a bit revealing. Who, if you could have dinner, anyone, dead or alive, who would it be and why?
For me, it would be pretty recently passed John Singleton, writer, filmmaker, writer, cinematographer. Apart from just his work and again, his approach, I always think of his clarity, the purpose and vision. And again, the style that came out of that, and the way in which he communicated with people inside of his work, outside of his work. So to be able to talk to him about that and and also his films, his own influences, because he was such a serious historian
Yeah.
of filmmaking and of images, which I think would be a real treat.
Man, yeah, Mapate, we must be brothers from another mother because that is one of my favorite producers and directors. He's also a fellow member of Kappa Alpha Psi, and he's a guy who influenced me from a life standpoint. His first movie, Boys in the Hood, was released coincidentally in 1991 when a young Dana Ammons was graduating from high school in Omaha, Nebraska, and headed to Atlanta to go to Morehouse College myself. And so I identified a lot with Trey from the movie Boys in the Hood. And then I went on to find out that John Singleton, as a producer and director behind it, had, purposefully worked that element into the story. So it's always remained kind of a really touchstone type movie for me. And he was a big, big influence. And then his last movie or TV show project, Snowfall, I still think is probably one of the more slept on series that have come out on TV in the last 5 or so years. People, if you haven't watched it, go watch it. It's on streaming now, but super, super good series, Snowfall. All right, so let's wrap this up and get into the main interview. And today I want to, Mapate, really explore a couple of different parts of your brand story. But before we go into the actual Diop brand itself, let's get to know a little bit about you and your origin story. Tell us a little bit about how you got started, where you come from, and what ultimately led you to a life as a founder in the fashion space.
Absolutely. So I'm a native of New York, New York. I grew up on the west side of Manhattan. Both of my parents are college professors, which means they do a lot of research, a lot of travel. And yeah, after college, I went to college, Massachusetts. After college, I did a postgraduate fellowship called Venture for America. It's a 2-year fellowship that places, or rather connects startups all over the country in 20 cities, 25 cities all over the country with new graduates, recent graduates who are interested in building things and interested in solving problems and building things, from startups that are just one person to some that are 100 people, a very wide range. So I was in Baltimore. My placement was in Baltimore as a transportation software company. I believe I was the 12th or 13th employee, but I was one of the first few business side employees. So essentially, my job every day was, well, we had our developers and we had our coders building the product. I was figuring out how to sell the product. You can start up in two things. So I'm going to build it, so I'm going to sell it.
Yep.
And Diop was actually started on, not so much on accident, but it's nice if we had Evan and I, my co-founder, Evan Freed, it's nice if we had planned to do it. It was about 7 or 8 years ago. I was at a party. I was wearing a shirt that my mom had gotten me. She'd been traveling in Nigeria. She'd bought some fabrics, took it to a tailor, and made it into a garment. And Evan complimented me on my shirt. And when I told him it was custom, he said, "Oh, so I can make that myself." I said, "Absolutely." So he did the same thing. He went to a fabric store. He bought some cotton fabrics, took it to a tailor, and got it made. And whenever he would wear it, people would compliment it. It was a couple of months later when our friend Lauren said, "You guys might have a product that you can sell that people might like, but you should test it out first." And we didn't know the first thing about that because we'd never sold anything before. Evan was working for a beverage company at the time and a grocery business. And so we did a crowdfunding campaign in 2018 with VFA's help. And we raised about $20,000 in 5 weeks. We also sold about 300 shirts, which we then had to go learn how to make. And then based off the success of that crowdfunding campaign, VFA offered us a place in their accelerator, which was just a space for you and a couple of other people in your VFA cohort to take an idea, turn it into a product, take a product and turn it into a business. And so, yeah, and they paid for all our expenses for 4 months and said, "See if you guys can build a business out of it." And that's how we got started.
And that's how you got started. Wow. Look, I want to definitely circle back on the founding story and get more into Diop, but you said something early on, and I also want our audience to understand. And we like to give people inspiration through various insights into different paths to being a founder. And you had an educational path. Tell us about it. You grew up in New York, and you grew up as, we affectionately in the community sometimes say you were a PK kid, but you were a different PK kid. You weren't a preacher's kid. You were a professor's kid, right? Two professor kid. So you grew up in clearly a household where education was paramount, right? And I know just from my relationships with the community and the culture, that was something that you didn't have a relative choice in. You were going to go to school, you were going to, figure things out, but you were going to school. So when you coming out of a household and in New York City, much less, where there's so much educational focus and influence, how did that shape, combined with your heritage and background, how did that shape your decision on what to study and what to actually focus on when you got to college?
Absolutely. I mean, the most consistent thing is that you're a lifelong learner. One, you
Yeah.
never stop learning, even when you become an expert. And there's a lot of different kinds of learning, both inside the classroom, out of the classroom, but then there's also learning by doing, which is really what the business is. Because neither Evan and I are trained designers. We didn't go to school for it. We hadn't been working in the industry, and respectively, this is each of ours first business. But as far as school is concerned, there's a real emphasis, and also because I went to a liberal arts college, on having an active mind, and that the life of the mind is something that's very active and not passive, and also something that happens in relation to other people, and that opportunities come from meeting other people, connecting with them, building with them, learning from them, trying things, failing, and then trying again. So very much learning as an active process, no
Yep.
matter what it is you choose to study.
Now, that's a great point and segue into your, first foray into branding via Diop and kind of your choices. And as I read through your website and did some research on the brand, I was fascinated by the singular focus around the type of fabric and the patterns that are represented in Diop. Talk to our audience a little bit more about the genesis of that aspect of the brand. How, because like you said, you had a friend, Evan, he's checking you out. Probably would have been me at the back in the day. Bro, where can I get that shirt from? It's dope. I'd like to get something like it, right? Then he gets it, figures out, man, all I got to do is make something. I got to get the fabric, but the fabric seems to be the key. Talk about that part of your brand and why that was so important.
Absolutely. Well, the shirt and sort of the waxed cotton fabric, it was, to use a business term, it was the hero product. We didn't had no ambitions as far as a label or a business, but we had a really good product. That's what we started everything out with. And that was going to be the thing that we really built the business on, and we found our customers and did that from. And even stylistically speaking, from the way in which we would shoot the shirts, the way in which we sell them, to where we sell them, to how we talk about them. Everything was influenced by having a wax cotton fabric that was very colorful, that was very eye catching, that was a way in which only we could tell a story, but also that others felt that they could tell a story and connect really with us. It was sort of our way of kind of building out a tent and not just saying that, hey, we might have something for you, but that people can find us and say, hey, that might be for me. So everything really starts there. Even going further into product development, when we think about the products we make, products we want to make, products we iterate on, or whenever someone makes a suggestion or we talk to customers and we ask them what's missing from their wardrobe, well, we really think about, or they ask us, how would you do this thing from your perspective? And our perspective really is sort of influenced or informed first and foremost by the fabric.
Yeah. Now that's pretty kind of linked to where we want to focus a lot of our conversation on today, which you spoke a couple of times about listening to and talking to your consumer. Like you are having an active dialogue. How are you having those conversations with your consumer? How did you first get a feel for, you and your co-founder, for the designs that you were planning on developing, or whether they were going to be received by your target consumer or not? So talk a little bit about that process. Like, how'd you identify your consumer? How'd you know that these fabrics and these patterns were actually going to be something they liked?
Absolutely. And this is where the accelerator, and this is where really having the time, because it was about a year between Evan coming up to me at that party and, well, a year and a half, and us actually incorporating into a brand. We sold about 300 shirts during our crowdfunding campaign. And in addition to that, and then we had another 100, I want to say we interviewed about the first 150 people we sold things to. It was simply just a post-purchase email that says, hey, I'm Evan. Or hey, I'm Evan. I'm Mapate. We're brand new to this. We'd love to know more about you. Do you have 20 minutes to chat? And so we would interview them. It was very much focused on human-centered design. So there's about, let's say, 25 to 30 questions. And about half the questions were demographic, who are you? Where are you from? Where do you live? What do you do? And then the rest of them were really psychographic, which is more so, why did you buy this? How did you find out about this? What do you like about this? What don't you like about this? What's missing from your life? Really trying to give us a holistic sense of who this might be for. And then and then from there, and again, that also impacted everything, not just from what we were going to make, but how we were going to talk about it. And that was also important because I think another thing that makes us unique relative to other brands is we're bootstrapped. So Evan and I have never done any fundraising. We've never raised any money. I own half, Evan owns half. But because of that, all of the revenue goes back to the business. And because of that, we have to be very sustainable and we have to be very careful with what we make. And that goes from everything from how much we manufacture to where we store it to how we're going to improve on products to how we're going to put something out and then get feedback from that and then build it better the next time, or being very diligent about which new products we come out. So because of that, we had to be very careful and very circumspect about how we reach people, but then also how we took that feedback on, especially given that we didn't have any training or experience in this. And we are doing a lot of learning by doing, but it really does come back to those sort of first customer surveys and those files. So that really looking through them and really building our customer profiles and understanding who is this person? Where do they spend their time? How do we reach them? How do we get them coming back? And really trying to answer all of those questions very deliberately.
Wow. That was a really important point. Can we hear that again?
But it really does come back to those sort of first customer surveys and those files. So that really looking through them and really building our customer profiles and understanding who is this person? Where do they spend their time? How do we reach them? How do we get them coming back? And really trying to answer all of those questions very deliberately.
Now, can you share an example where through those surveys, through that interaction with your consumer, you identified either a trend or a particular data point that actually influenced a major decision at Diop?
Absolutely. When our first tier of product was our top, and then we moved into shorts, the first accessory we ever made was a bucket hat. And we put out, I want to say maybe 90 or 100 of them, but they were all one size. And so and so when we continued to conduct the surveys, I want to say we talked to about 11 or 12 people who would all say the same thing that, oh, I bought the bucket hat, or, oh, I bought the shorts, or I bought the top. And they also said, I got a bucket hat, and I got the bucket hat because I liked that it matched what I had. And then they would all say, oh, it's a little bit smug or a little bit small. And it was about the 11th or 12th person who said it was a little bit small. And I said, oh, we made these all to be one size. People have different size heads. That's when we said, okay, for when we bring these back again next year, we're going to need to have 3 different sizes.
Yep.
And from there, having the multiple sizes, then we had a much faster sell through. And the bucket hats are probably, apart from the shorts, the bucket hats are probably the item we hear most about. And it's the item that gets pulled, mostly just because we're able to then make it available to a wider number of people. So it was really seeing repeated, not so much a throwaway comment, but just a very casual observation on the part of people we talked to, that from there we figured out, oh, we can't have a bucket hat that's one size fits all. We actually need to break it out into sizes. I know that's a very practical decision that came through reading back through the interviews, reading back through what people had told us, and it was able to influence how we move forward, and is something that is now incorporated fully into our product development process.
And Mapate, talk a little bit about that, because I've had a couple of clients come to me who are in the fashion space. And one of the first major decisions that you have to make as a young designer, older designer, new designer coming into the space is something you pointed out, kind of this one size fits all scenario, right? Versus you have to have sizes in a wide range of body types across multiple garments, right? So it starts to multiply the amount of inventory you have to purchase. And so I get a lot of young founders in the space that go, well, I'm just not going to go into clothing because it's too expensive, right? To bootstrap and self-fund. I'm just going to do accessories. I'm going to do belts, or I'm going to do hats, or I'm going to do socks, etc. Talk about you and your founders' thought process. I mean, as you said, you started shirts and you built, and you have a fantastic array of items on the website now. How did you go from shirt to shorts to bucket hats and still self-fund? Because as you noted, you guys haven't taken any significant money other than the first Kickstarter campaign. Is that correct? So you've been doing this for the most part out of your own funds, but you yet still have all of these sizes and these different styles available on your website. How do you do it?
Well, that part of that is the product development. So when we think about a product, we think, and this is very much the way with shorts, is okay, if we want to make, or because we made a top and people said, oh, I'd like matching shorts. So everyone on the team, there's 4 of us, has input on product development. It's really working backwards from, okay, let's think about shorts. Okay, what do we like about shorts? What do we not like about shorts? Where do we wear them? When do we not wear them? What's missing? And just really thinking about how we live our lives and how shorts apply in our lives. And then from there, we go into the sample process and we talk about specific shorts, or shorts that we think about fondly, or shorts we think about not so fondly. And then taking it from there and really kind of creating a list, almost like a note of the things that shows have to accomplish, things they can and can't accomplish. And then from there, we sit down with the designer on our team, but then also with our manufacturers, with their tailors, with their pattern makers, and really thinking it through. And then from there, we put out sort of the minimum viable product. So then, but also making notes for things we can improve upon the next time. And the reason, again, was to really be, I'm going to use the word again, holistic, in the way in which people live their lives, and the way in which people live their lives with their clothes, and how it makes them feel, and what it is they do, and how it is they think about the journey that they're on, and maybe the stage that they're at in life. And that's really never steered us wrong, because then we'll know just how much to make. And then also, because then we won't make too much. And we also think selling out is good, like selling out a product is good. But then also helped us think about, okay, how will we make this better? How will we improve it? Because to us, it's especially for a bootstrap business designer to put something out once, it's thinking, okay, how can we build a bridge to put something out further? Or how do we build a bridge to then improve on this product? Because most of our revenue doesn't necessarily come from new customer, it comes from returning customers. So really thinking about what's missing from someone's life, what's missing from someone's wardrobe, what's missing from someone's rotation. It's not just about bringing new people in, but it's also about keeping people that are already here, not just sort of satisfied, but continuing to go above and beyond for them and to what fits into the lifestyle. Because again, that impacts not just what we make, but how we talk about it, where it is, how it is they reach us, what stories we tell. Each of those things it's ideally it's a virtuous cycle, and what you learn from one thing, you apply to something else. And then that thing also goes back into the original. I hope that makes sense.
No, it makes a lot of sense. And I love that answer, because one of the things that I was really fascinated by on your website that you alluded to there is really making sure your brand is speaking to a point of view and to a specific audience in the fashion category. But what I've noticed on your website, and I thought it was just such a thoughtful approach to it, is you are not just approaching your existing customers with designs and styles that you believe they will continue, as you said, to buy because that's missing in their closet or in their wardrobe, but you're also bringing new consumers under your tent. And I noticed on your website, in that effort to bring new consumers under the tent, one of the things that you are very intentful about on the website is a who can wear this section, right? Just really kind of calling out and addressing head forward any, concerns by shoppers that may visit your brand's website and look at the fabrics and the colors and think, oh my God, this is West African and this is not of my culture and I'm not from the continent. So this is probably not for me. Clearly, this was a dialogue that you must have heard early on from interested consumers. Talk about that concept, Mapate, of staying true to your cultural origins of your brand, but also inviting in and opening the brand up to people who are not necessarily from the culture, but in a way that is very respectful of what you're trying to do. Talk about that process. How did you and your founder or your co-founder really, come up with this who can wear this section for the website in a way to speak to people who may not be from the culture but are interested in wearing clothes from the brand?
Absolutely. And so first, when you're doing human-centered design, when you're doing that sort of research early on into your customer, one of the things you learn is that you have to anticipate objections. So when we think about how do we reach people, when we think about on a very practical level, how do we reach people? How do we get them coming back? And that's everything from how do you shoot your product to how do you price it. One of the things is what are the most common questions you're going to get and how do you answer them very directly in a very direct way. And that's everything from directly, let's view you on the site with your pages, but even just to how does it appear on mobile? How do I pay for this? When I click on it, what sort of information do we want to collect? This person's email? Do we want to collect this person's phone number? So when we do those designs with, I want to say the first 100 people, or when we do these surveys and we do these interviews with our 100 people purchase product, the second question or the second or third question that often came up is, is this for me? Is this appropriate for me?
The second question. That was the second.
Typically the second or third. Yeah. Typically the second or third. And typically it was after sizing was always the first question, as it is with all clothes. And that's how we built our size chart. And that's how we put size charts on it. And so we would keep getting that question. And so we thought, well, what's sort of not so much an economical or an efficient way, but how's there a way again to continue to dialogue many people are already having amongst themselves and to talk about it. And then to kind of swing back away from business more into the heritage side of things. The waxed cotton fabric which is originally from Indonesia and was brought
Yeah.
to West Africa by Dutch traders. So we try to point out that the heritage of this particular fabric and this particular product, while there are different fabrics and different, textile practices that are indigenous to certain reasons, it wouldn't have happened without different kinds of people exchanging it and creating a market for it. People taking it from Asia to Africa, it being styled in a particular way, going from Africa to Europe, being styled in another way from Europe to America, and really just kind of opening the aperture for what is possible with that fabric. And people have been making the fabric dyeing method is about 1,000 years old, in particular wax cotton fabric they've been using for 100 years. But we thought, how would we put our spin on it? How would we put our perspective on it? How would we style it in a contemporary way so that it's not just something that's just in a museum, it's something you can actually wear to work. It's
Correct.
something that is, again, as active as you are and like lives with you, whether it's I'm going to go get my groceries or I'm going to a show, it's something that is really meaningfully engaged with you. Because we think the best parts of fashion and style do that is they remix things, but then they also recontextualize
Yep.
things. But then they also bring you not just closer to that history and to that heritage, but they bring you closer to other people and where they're from. And so again, and it really is a dialogue. And what I kind of talked about earlier about, learning being also a social relationship and also being something that is something that happens with other people, and opportunity is something that happens with other people. I think that's one of the major parts of any sort of code of style or any sort of code of fashion is the way in which it brings in the way in which people relate to each other through it.
Now, that's a fascinating and just complex history behind the fabric itself, right? And it's something I want to point out to our audience. Make sure you go out to the Diop website and check out not just their branding and all of their great articles and items, but the story and the history behind the fabric I found equally fascinating. And the fact that it was, to your point, it's Indonesian in origin, right? It's not an African or West African produced fabric, but then the West African culture took it. And then, as you said, dye technology and processes over hundreds of years have come up with these really vibrant patterns and different styles in the fabric. And so one of the things I was curious about is, do the patterns that are printed and dyed into these wax cotton fabric, do the patterns themselves have specific cultural meaning? And if so, what, if any, challenges did that present to you and your co-founder when you were initially sourcing and deciding like what fabrics to use for
the specific? Well, each one does. And if you go to particular countries, there'll be particular nuances on the fabric, even down to what they call it. I mean, we refer to it as wax cotton. In some places, it's Ankara. In Indonesia, it's batik fabric. So there are places where they will print specific things on it, and that will have a particular meaning. And again, that's particular to that. And what's great too is that now, because of e-commerce and because of a lot of the gains we've made in fashion and styling, there are now brands that do that and put their own spin on that from those countries, from those places that do a lot of storytelling around that. And so that definitely did present a challenge because we're making our own, because now for various reasons, but particularly because we wanted to make different kinds of products, some that weren't all 100% cotton, mixing in some synthetics and some blends. Now we've gotten into producing our own and making our own patterns, which is also something you learn to do once you learn the proper techniques, is you can begin to make your own and begin to make your own style and really think it up. But that was very much a challenge, even just as far as sourcing and making sure there was enough textiles to yield certain products and to have a decent product mix, but also to be able to make enough. At the same time, that constraint was also very helpful because it meant we had to be very economical and we couldn't be very wasteful in, what we spent when we did produce something or when we did choose to make something. So it was very good because it made us be very creative in what we made, and again, how we made it, and again, how we improved on it. Because it wasn't enough to just make something once. It was, how would we make this again? And then how would we, again, take the feedback from the customers and improve for them? So
how do you scale it?
Certainly was a challenge. Yes. How do we scale it?
Now, and let's stay with that thing for a little bit, because it again is so fascinating to me in this particular aspect that your brand creation process involves much more cultural consideration than a lot of other products and brands we've recently engaged with, right? You're creating a product that is in a way representing the person as they step out in public, right? And so I love the consideration around the patterns and the colors. So let me ask you this. As I look at the website and talk through that section where you are addressing people's second kind of most important concern about the brand, which is it for me? And you talk a little bit about cultural appropriation and how that is a current conversation across the culture. And as I thought about it and researched your brand and looked at a lot of your items, as an African-American male who has over the years embraced all forms of cultural aspects of the African diaspora, but also has also been guilty of not fully understanding every single aspect of every single piece of clothing or item that I have as a young Black guy who grew up in the early 90s when we had the leather, African pieces, and we had the Africa Bambaataa kind of movement, and everybody was wearing red, black, and green, and kind of didn't really understand and fully kind of engage right with all of the cultural meanings of that. And now bringing it into your brand in 2024, do you find yourself sometimes having to or trying to avoid kind of the stereotypical depiction of what African fabric is? And the one that comes to mind for me is kente cloth. Like the whole debacle a couple of years ago with the Congress and members of Congress doing the whole kneel down with the kente cloth stoles on. I thought of that when I looked at your brand and thought, man, Mapate must really have to navigate through some pretty kind of, stereotypical looks of what African fabric and African fashion looks like. Talk about that in terms of how you and your founder and your employees think about putting out, to your point, innovative designs and fashion statements in the space that don't get kind of pushed into the, oh, that's another kente cloth, or that's just another African, brand.
On the one side, I think really the focus on the diaspora and the idea of us as first and second generation Americans really taking something, thinking a lot about it, and thinking how does it best represent us in our day-to-day lives? Because that's something that's common to a lot of people from lots of different backgrounds, not just African or Black or people who are from someplace, but they live somewhere else, or they grew up in one place and they work somewhere else. So that's, I think, an active process in everything you do, not what you wear, what you eat, what you listen to. And of course, those are also all elements of style. Those are also things that go into the production of those things. And I think that process you just described with how do you stay away from something that is stereotypical and does actually feel true and meaningful, or maybe perhaps authentic to your perspective, that's something our customer thinks about. That's a way of identifying our customer. And that's a way of really thinking about and talking to them, because we think everyone is on a journey and they deserve something that really fits like where they are on that journey. And a lot of our customers will often say, or, that, when they found us, is that it was their first time really actively thinking about their style and, what they wanted to kind of talk about, or what they thought was, very relevant to them. I think very on about a customer we had who said that, they would have a Hawaiian shirt day at his office. And he said, well, I don't want to wear a Hawaiian shirt. I wanted something that felt a little more relevant to my experience.
Right.
And so he would wear a Diop top to work, and people would ask him about that. And we think everyone deserves clothing, not just clothing, but even starting there with fashion, something that really fits into their experience and really fits into how it is they want to move through the world.
Eloise, can you bring that back one more time? We need to hear that again.
And we think everyone deserves clothing, not just clothing, but even starting there with fashion, something that really fits into their experience and really fits into how it is they want to move through the world. So that really does come from trying to represent the product as realistically as possible to the customer, and really demonstrate how this can fit into their lives, and how they can take it and make it their own, and how they can take it and talk about it and use it to create a dialogue with the things that are going on there.
I love that.
So it's both the focus on the diaspora, but then also on the customer and their journey,
On the customer as well.
Identity. Yeah.
No, I love that. And following that out, as you look forward for Diop and you are following the customer on the journey, but to your point, staying real to the diaspora as well, what should we think about and look to for the brand in the future? How are you envisioning the brand growing along that spectrum?
I envision the brand growing that we're just one sort of keyhole into an entire world of not just brands, but artists, creatives, people making things, particularly independently, because we're an independent brand. So, while we might not have a specific product for you yet, or we might not have a specific style for you yet, or we might be sold out of specific style, we're simply just an entry point into really a universe of things that are available to you, not just from people who are in the diaspora, but from other Black-owned businesses, from other independent makers and creators, from other people who are trying to offer their perspective and connect with others. So I'd say that the first thing is really as a platform to reaching those other people. And then on the other side, as far as the growth of the brand, really, again, continuing to grow with the customer, to continuing to not just fill out your wardrobe, but really fill out your life and really reflect the active things and the active concerns that are going on in your life. And in presenting that in a very meaningful way. Because we really do think we grow with our customer And we want to be able to put things out that really represent that and really represent that relationship and that connection. So those are the two things we think about each and every single day is then how can we then lead you on perhaps to the next thing, whether that be from another country or from another brand, but then also how is it that we keep growing with you in your life?
I love that. Now, as you think about the brand's platform right now and how you have essentially self-funded it, and I know this is not technically the main focus of this particular interview, but I'm just fascinated by how brands make decisions on how to fund growth. And you've been very specific. You said, hey, we're an independent brand, 50-50 owned between me and my co-founder. We have not to date gone out and secured or solicited major funding or investment. But tell us about what that looks like in the future. Are you envisioning a future where you will be able to self-fund your growth and scale that way? Are you thinking in the future you would go out and engage investors and seek investment? How are you thinking about your future with respect to growing it that way?
We think about it simply like every other entrepreneur or pretty much every other person who works on or at a business is really just what's the viability of this thing. We always thought that we would only have to take on funding if we had something that really scaled beyond our audience. But of course, that's a different kind of business. That's a different kind of business as far as maybe who you're talking to, the scale at which you're running, the sort of expertise that you would need. Because till now, Evan and I and our employees, we've really done it by learning. So that would take just as much thinking as you put into the product. It would take us just as much thinking into what sort of business that is. We're happy to keep self-funding and putting the money back into the business because it allows us the time more so than anything to be able to try things, to be able to figure out things with the audience, to be able to really tweak the products and really put something out that we're proud of. And again, really just something that does feel connected and does feel useful to our customer. And I say all that to say that we're not necessarily opposed to taking funding or changing the business. But again, it really is that question of viability. It's okay, there might be a problem out there. There might be something out there. Do we have a solution? If so, does it work? If it does work, for how many people does it work? And how many people does it work? And how will we reach them? And again, really working our way backwards from there to, again, there's that word again, holistically think about the business and who will we work with in order to scale this and do that thing. So we're never opposed to it. It just take a lot of time and a lot of diligence and a lot of consideration for what sort of business we want to run and how we want to continue to connect with people and meet them where they are.
No, I love that. And just real quick, because I didn't think I clarified this at the beginning of the interview, Mapate, are you employed full time doing something and also running the business, or are you running the business 100% of your time?
We're running the business 100% of the time. We've been full time now for 6 years.
Wow. And so just real quick on that front, because I think, I'm a big fan of Shark Tank, and you kind of always watch Shark Tank with fascination, right? And the founders go on and they say, hey, I've been grinding this thing out. I'm self-funded. I haven't paid myself a salary, et cetera. Again, fascinated as I think about you being on this journey for 6 years and really all in. What's your advice to entrepreneurs, especially in the fashion space, on how to approach and think about approaching? Do I work a full-time job? Do I try to do this on the side? Do I do this 100% of my time? Talk about how you thought through it. And then what would your advice be to entrepreneurs and new founders and brand owners?
Cool. Well, I've got one piece of tactical advice and one piece of strategic advice.
Yeah. Warning, the following information is important. You may want to pay attention.
The tactical advice is start collecting phone numbers and emails yesterday. Doesn't matter what you're selling. In this case, we're talking about fashion entrepreneurs, but you could be selling dog food. You could be selling airplanes. You could be selling insurance. Start collecting because that will do this. It started out and is still true that is our most profitable revenue channel. Having a direct one-to-one relationship with your customers. And whether that's, again, not just the product stuff and promotions, but even surveys, content, really building a community, having people support you, then feeling like they have a one-to-one relationship and that they can talk to you specifically, not just as an audience member, but as a person, being in their inbox, being in their cell phone goes a very long way. So that's one piece of tactical advice. Any sort of landing page should do on your website. Just here's your email or here's our phone number. Yeah. And keep that list, keep that Excel list. The strategic advice, again, it sounds cliche, but just define success. What sort of business do you want to run, or what do you want to make, or how do you want to reach people? It all counts. It all matters. If you'd like to sell 1 million widgets, if you want to be on the cover of this magazine, that magazine, you can do it. Then from there, you'll just have to work backwards. But what's nice about that is then you'll never be steered wrong. You'll always know what to do or how to answer the question. of, okay, I have a goal in mind. How do I reach that goal? Okay, let me work backwards from there.
Yeah.
And that is the most important thing as an entrepreneur, and everything kind of thing. And people disagree with me on this, and they should feel free to disagree. I really do think you can have it all, just not all at once.
Can we hear that again?
I really do think you can have it all, just not all at once. And so you really
love
have
that.
to be deliberate. You really have to be deliberate about the steps you take to get there. But ideally, they're your steps. They're not something you're being forced into or something like you feel like you have to be doing. So really trust your instinct, because sometimes the answer is not always black and white. I bring up that thing about viability. It's not, is this good? Is this bad? It's, okay, does this work? Okay, does this scale? And then from there, really thinking about, and then the sorts of choices you'll have to make. Okay, if I have to work a job and do this on the side, maybe that's okay. Okay, maybe I can quit and maybe I can do it. Maybe I can quit, do it, fail fast, and maybe I can go get another job. Sometimes the answer is a combination of all three.
Yeah.
But you really want to hone your instincts and really do as much testing as you can to then be able to figure that out. So those are always the two things I tell people. What does
I love that.
emails define success?
I love that. I love that. That quote, hey, you can have it all, right? But you can't have it all at the same time. I love that quote because that is so, so true. And I definitely agree with you, right? There are ways you can have it all. There are opportunities, and the grind does allow for, right? There's 12 hours in a day. There's 24 hours if you want to run it all the way through. But the reality is it's up to you, right? It's up to you. And I love that perspective. Well, look, we really, really appreciate the time you spent on the screen with us today talking about Diop. Now, before we wrap up, can you let our audience know where they can find you and Diop online and on social media?
Sure. So Where Diop, our website is wherediop.com, WEARDIOP. That's also our handle on Instagram and TikTok, WEAR. DIOP. So that's there for all of our products, everything that we've got going on social media. We do giveaways, we do collaborations, we do partnerships, all sorts of fun things like that. But yeah, that's where we are. That's our handle across all socials. WEAR DIOP. That's Where Diop. And the brand is called Diop.
All right. And then your personal socials and where they can find you if they want to get in touch with you, if we got brands out there that want to collaborate.
Absolutely. So I'm Mapate at wherediop.com, MAPATE at wherediop.com. That's my email. And then my socials across all platforms is at Mapate at ATMAPATE. But again, any specific question, I'm always available by email.
We definitely will be sharing the link to the Diop website as well as Mapate's direct information. So you can reach out to him. Just check out www.thebrandblueprint.biz. And you will find his profile there along with a lot of exciting links. We'll also work with Mapate as we have with other brands to potentially deliver a discount code or a key code that you can use. We want all of our listeners and followers to go out to the Diop website and grab an item today. I can tell you right now, the robe and the bucket hat are definitely coming to me. And Mapate, I'm so glad that you actually went to 3 sizes because a brother has a 7 5/8 head. I probably am on that side. I was one of those people probably early on that bought the bucket hat and couldn't quite pull it down over my head and called you up and said, hey man, you're going to need to get an extra large in the size. So I'm looking forward to supporting the brand. I know the team is really excited about exporting the brand as well. So look, Mapate, it's been an absolute pleasure having you on the Brand Blueprint podcast today. Thank you for sharing your incredible journey and insights with us. We wish you and Diop continued success. We look forward to seeing what you achieve next. We would love to have you come back on the show in the future and share some more about Diop's growth or whatever else, because I got a feeling there'll be a couple of other projects that come from your creation in the near future. So come back on the show to share with us. And to our listeners, thank you for tuning in. Stay connected with us for more inspiring founder stories on the Brand Blueprint. Thanks and have a great day, guys. Thanks for joining us on the Brand Blueprint journey. Make sure to follow us on all of our social media platforms to stay updated. Watch the full episodes on our YouTube channel for an in-depth experience. Don't forget to subscribe to our website at thebrandblueprint.biz for exclusive content and materials. We're everywhere you need us to be.